So you want to start a fantasy basketball league. We're going to talk about the settings. We're going to talk about the defaults. We're going to talk about the sites. We're going to talk about things to change. We're going to talk about problems to try and overcome as we set up our leagues for the upcoming season. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I've got to get this episode out quickly because I'm a little bit scared that AJ Preller is going to trade me away. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. So give it a thumb, give it a double bang, leave your comments down below. Listen to the audio and watch the video. What are we doing here? We're talking about setting up an NBA fantasy league, a fantasy basketball league for this upcoming season. We're going to talk redraft. We're going to talk dynasty leagues. We're going to talk about defaults that sites have, which cause so many of the problems. We're going to talk about ways to address some of the issues, which are either perceived or real, and ways that we can try and minimize things and, make things more fun. Because again, let's be honest, this is fun. This is fun. It's a hobby. It's entertainment. That is what it is. So let's try and make it fun, I hope. Let's get in and talk about this stuff across fantasy leagues and the sort of discussions we need to have. Again, I will try and cover as many things as I possibly can here, but there are so many different nuances and little tweaks that you can make, and your league may have certain things that does this and that and this. I can't cover every single thing. So if there's something you think that I didn't cover, or you want a question specifically asked, drop it in the comments and I'll get to it there. Your first decision needs to be, what sort of league am I running? Right? Now, let's also talk about this. Part of the problem and problems do exist in fantasy basketball, and I work relatively tirelessly. I still sleep. I work relatively tirelessly to try and make things better, to try and eliminate problems, to grow the game and produce enjoyment for people. Part of the problems with Fantasy League are the host sites that have absolute dogshit default settings, which contribute to the problems. So if you just go and join a public league, you're going to have a bad experience the majority of the time. So it can be hard to find trusted commissioners and private leagues with correct settings. Now, some people can go over the top in their settings in trying to make things and tweak things and do this, and this is perfect, and those things don't exist. Perfection does not exist, unless you're looking at my chiseled jawline. Otherwise, perfection does not exist. So, everything is nuanced. Everything is balanced. It's not black, white. It's gray. The two types of leagues are categories and points. Points, each NBA stat that you choose to accumulate is assigned a point value, and that can be adjusted. Categories, it's just simple. One rebound is worth one rebound. One steal is worth one steal. Yep, we get that point of it. So there are multiple ways to run these leagues. There are 6 different league types. 3 points, 3 categories. Head-to-head, each category. Again, I think that is the most common form of game. Now, what you will see is when you go onto ESPN or Yahoo and set up a league, it will now default to points leagues. They are trying to push points leagues. I don't know why. Category leagues still remain the most popular. People that play points leagues, for a large portion of those people, will still try and move towards a category league. Category league is more entertaining, it's more engaging, it's more challenging. Yes? Okay. And head-to-head, each category is still the most popular format of fantasy basketball. And that is what I will still focus most of my time on. I will still talk points. And 80% of what I say covers all league types. But usually I'm coming from a head-to-head each category lens. Head-to-head most category, well, pretty straightforward, isn't it? If I win more categories than you during the week, I win. I get a 1-0. That's it. Rotisserie. I'll probably host more Roto leagues this season. I think that it's a format that, again, people go, it's so boring, playing against someone each week. And I don't really understand that point unless you're talking about mates. Right? If you're in a league with a bunch of mates and you want to have that trash talk element, cool. If you're in a league with a bunch of people that you don't really know, I don't get why we want to have all this level of trash talk. was like in the group chat with someone you don't know. Like, what for? Anyway, rotos should be explored more. And there's points leagues, which we talked about. Head-to-head points, it's a weekly matchup. I get more fantasy points than you, I win. There is a league type which doesn't get used very much. It's total points. It's just who accumulates the most fantasy points over the course of the season. And then best ball, which I'm not going to really cover much on this show. Best ball is a league which, again, I can't really access that here because of legal stuff. But you draft a team, you make no moves, you make no trades, waiver claims, or roster decisions. Each week, the system automatically picks your best guys, and those points count. That's all that is. It's a great way if you just want to do millions of drafts. You play money, you've got a chance to win big prizes, but there's no in-season management. And we're not going to cover that because, again, this show largely is in-season management. But there'll be stuff that does apply to that. With all of our, like I said, preseason stuff, a lot of that stuff will apply to best ball because we're talking about values of players and roles and changes and things like that, which are applicable. So when you're going in to set up a league, and like I said, there's plenty of defaults that get set, and it is very easy as a commissioner or someone who's a commissioner in your league and you know what they're doing to just go, yeah, click, 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 and just let it go through. Now, on Yahoo and ESPN, the default is 10 teams. Previously, it used to be 12 on Yahoo. It's 12 on Fantrax. How many teams you choose is realistically just up to you. I think ideally, you want to keep it relatively default. The big thing about it is, though, whether it's 10 teams or 12 teams or 14 teams, you want to make sure that there is a decent chunk of players rostered. So if you do go to a 10-team league, I think what you need to do is you need to bump your roster size up. If you have to play in an 8-team league, you bump your roster size up. Most of the things that I discuss will be talking about leagues where there's between 160 and 200 players rostered, which is a 12 up to like 14-team league. Remembering that IL spots count as extra players rostered, all that sort of stuff. But again, if you're in a 10-team league, bump it up. Just add more players. And I'll talk about that later on. Playoffs. When the NBA schedule comes out, I will give more specificity on this. But you got to decide, do you have playoffs? You don't have to. You can just do whoever finishes on top at the end of the season wins. All right? Also, I want to address this because there are people who bitch and whinge and complain and moan all the time. I was the best team all season and I lost the playoffs. Okay. What are you going to do? That shit happens. These games that we play, these fantasy sports that we play, real life sports that we play, you are promised nothing. If you have the best team all regular season and you lose in the playoffs, guess what? Bad luck. It happens. If you play in a league where playoffs are there, understand that that is something that will happen. You are not guaranteed a single thing for being the best team for 19 weeks. It does not matter at all. It means nothing. It puts you in a position to make the playoffs. It might get you a bye or a perceived weaker opponent, but it doesn't. You don't deserve to win. None of that matters. And if you are going to have that feeling, don't play with playoffs. Do something different. Split your prize money. Hey, half the money goes to who finishes on top of the regular season, half goes in the playoffs. I don't care what you do in that scenario, but just understand, if you are the best team all regular season and you lose in the playoffs, you're not guaranteed to win. You don't deserve to win. You deserve to win by winning in the playoffs, because that is how the league is set up. In terms of the date, usually I would finish my final game of the playoffs 3 weeks before the end of the NBA season. That is what I have done for the last few years, and I will continue to do that. I don't see any reason that will change. Merging weeks is another thing that will happen. Around the All-Star break, nearly all sites, apart from ESPN, won't merge. Most sites will, ESPN won't, meaning that 2-week period with the All-Star game in the middle, there's normally 8 game days there, and that's your week. What Yahoo tried to do and got wrong last season was merge weeks around the NBA Cup. I did it in my leagues, and I would do it again this season once we see the schedule. But ideally, a weekly matchup that you use should have between 6 to 8 NBA game days. And that is what we'll attempt to do again this season. The other thing you could do is have multiple matchups per week. Now, normally it's just me versus John. But sometimes you get that, well, I've got a huge games disadvantage against Johnny over here. Or I had an unbelievable week, but John had the best and I was the second best and I still lost. And that's not really fair. Fair, right? Don't worry about fairness. But having more matchups per week, me versus John, me versus Sarah, me versus old Ricky Bobby over here, well, that smooths some of that perceived unfairness. Now, that's not possible on a lot of sites, but it is on Fantrax. So just be aware of that. We're going to come back and talk about roster size, roster splits, all that sort of stuff in a sec. Today's episode, though, it is brought to you by Game Time. You know that you've been there before. You're logging on, you're waiting for concert tickets to go on sale, and then you lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. The prices actually drop as you get closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of that endless scrolling, try and find the best deal, or Game Time Zone deals help you pick the best seats in the section that you're looking for, specifically for you. If you ever wonder what your seat will look like before you buy them, well, the app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, let's get into a little bit more of this and talk about the roster. Like I said before, you can have as many teams as you want, but choosing the right amount of players on a roster is one of the key things. I don't like that these sites have gone default 10-man leagues, but whatever. Okay, that's fine. I do not understand. 30 teams in the NBA, 15 players per roster, 3 two-ways. Yeah? We probably have 570 players that appear in NBA games all season. The idea that the fantasy roster size should be 130 is absolutely crazy to me, because that is what the default is on Yahoo and the default on ESPN. It is ridiculous. And there's plenty of people say, well, it's good. I like to have an active waiver wire and have a lot of good players out there. What that does, I believe, is it just creates, it doesn't reward skill as much. It requires a bunch of other things that need to be done in terms of settings to create restraints on the way your teams are built, but also it just doesn't make sense. At any given point in the NBA, there are 150 players who are starters. 5 starters per team, 30 teams. The 6th man plays normally starters minutes as well. But we're only going to roster 130 guys. It's not even including how many guys we actually start on a given day. Roster sizes are too small. It makes no sense why you would have a default of 13-man rosters. So that when you do a draft, it's uneven, and the team that picks first in round 1 picks first in 7 rounds and last in 6 rounds. You give them just another advantage, yeah? What is the point? I hate this idea that when things have started and ideas and settings have been ported over from other sports, that we just stick with them. There is absolutely zero reason for a 13-man roster. There's zero reason for an odd roster number, ever. It's pointless. Sure, in auction drafts, you can do whatever. It doesn't matter. But it is pointless. I would be looking to go minimum 160 players rostered, minimum, around that mark. And even that, I think, might be too low. Maybe 170 you want. Go up to 200 if you need to. Your active and bench split is important. The default, again, is ridiculous. 10 starters and 3 bench. Why? What is the point of that? And I could go into depth about why that is bad. Because a daily changes league with 10 starters and 3 bench means that you have 13 starters and no bench. Simple as that. You have no ability to hold a player who is struggling. You have no ability to hold a couple of injured guys with your IL full, because you need to use those 13 spots every week. You need to max out those games. There is no reason for the bench to be that. Look, you play fantasy football. I know you do. How big is your bench in that? What do you have? 12 starters and 3 on the bench? No, you don't. You've got a larger bench. You stash guys. You handcuff players. You deal with injuries. You deal with matchups. Oh, you've got to have guys for bye weeks. Well, in the NBA, there are bye days every week. The 10-3 split is stupid. Go 10-5, 10-6. I like 10-6 as a split, actually. 16 player rosters, 10 starters, 6 bench. In a 12-man league. I like it. Your positions. Again, Yahoo. What are you doing? Why is your default to have 2 centers? Insane. No need for it. One of your first things you do if you're starting a Yahoo league, change that. There is absolutely no reason for that. It is an insane setting that is a relic of the past that was set up for God knows what reason. ESPN, why do you have a position limit on centers? Only position that's got a limit, and they're both those two ideas are both in direct conflict with each other. Yahoo goes, you got to have 2 starting centers, man. That's so important. You have 2 starting centers. ESPN goes, hey, but I don't want you to have any centers. You've got to be limited in how many centers you can have. All right, so which one is it? We need to force more centers. We need to force fewer centers. The answer is neither. They're garbage settings and need to go. You should not have maximums per position. You should not have that. You should not have 1 starting point guard and 2 starting centers. And I know you'll say, but Josh, on Yahoo, you've got point guard and guards. So realistically, you can have 2 point guards in the starting lineup. You can. That's true. You can do that. But that guard slot is not a point guard slot. And if you have 2 point guards, it means you only have 1 shooting guard. Or if you have 2 small forwards, then you have 1 power forward. It's common sense to me. 1 center, 1 power forward. If you're doing that, or get rid of positions. Make them generic. Guard, forward, forward center, guard center, all utility. I know that some people push back against the idea of, if you have all utility, that means people can lean into more punts. All right, good. Who cares? If more people are leaning into a certain punt, you can lean against it. You can do something different. It gives more flexibility. It gives you more ability to do what you need to do versus being constrained by artificial issues. Your league has to have injured slots. Yahoo has these 2 setups, IL and IL+. Just get rid of IL. You do not need it because there are insane rules regarding it. Again, there are already challenges in playing fantasy basketball. I don't need to sit there and wait and go, Yahoo Fantasy Care, can you please put this guy IL+? It's been 3 games. And then the timing of it depends if you can add an extra player. Why do I need that decision to be made by somebody else that impacts how my league goes? And there might be unfairness around it, and that gives someone else an advantage or me a disadvantage. It's ridiculous. It should be IL+. Every slot. And having 0 is insane. You are wrong. Having 1 is bad. You should have a minimum of 3 injured slots. Minimum. And I go, but that means you can stash injured players. Yeah! Literally exactly the point. Oh, but we don't want that. We want activity on the waiver wire. I guarantee you don't. Because you might think, it's fun. Look at these guys, these names on the waiver wire. And we add them. You know what it means? The league is less competitive. Because, and I'll say this again, if you're in a spot where you've got 4 injured players and 1 injured slot, and you're 9th in the standings or 8th in the standings, you need to make decisions. Well, man, look, I'll always use KD in these examples for whatever reason. KD's out for the next 6 weeks. My injured slot is full with someone else who's out for 6 weeks, who's Luka, who's better, right? And I need the roster slot because I'm just losing, so I guess I have to drop him. You know who can add KD? The team at the top of the standings, because they've probably had good injury luck, so they might have an open IL slot, or they can afford to take some L's in week 14, 15, 16 because they're so far ahead of everybody else that they can store an injured guy on their bench and they can lose the games played. And then guess what happens? When those players return, they become unbeatable. The fewer injured reserve slots you have, the fewer bench slots you have, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, the gap splits, more uncompetitive matchups, teams give up earlier, and the league turns to shit. Add more bench slots, add more roster slots, add more IL slots. If you've got 3 IL slots, do 4. There is no disadvantage to this. There is no disadvantage to this. And I know someone will say there is one. There isn't. I'm not going to go in depth about max roster slots or games cap stuff, but it is a decision you can make on Fantrax. You can't on the other sites because, they're stuck in 1992, where you can set up how many games per week each active roster slot can play, which addresses one of the big concerns, games played discrepancies. If you have the ability to do this and you're playing on Fantrax, you do it. Very simple. Very simple. Scoring settings. A lot of you will waste an inordinate amount of time on this. Inordinate. You will say, man, Josh, with the points league, you can make it like a category league. You just got to find the right settings. You got to tweak it. Wrong. There is no perfect setting. There is no perfect setting. There is no, if I tweak my points league thing, it actually makes it more like a category league. You're wrong. It doesn't do that. There is no real reason. Now, you can have quibbles about, do I like ESPN's default scoring? Do I like Yahoo's default scoring? Right? Whatever you want. There's no real reason to change these. There's no real reason. I like to make it 0.75 for every made field goal and minus 1.25 for a missed free throw. And that gives a real penalty. And there's minus a 10 for an ejection. There's 50 points for a quadruple. Why? There's no need. Because, again, when people talk fantasy points, when people discuss these things, and when you're looking at things, in the end, you're talking about, hey, my guy averaged 50. He got 30. He got 45. It doesn't matter how they got there, really. And and as much as I can shit on ESPN and Yahoo and the way they set up their leagues, and I think Yahoo might be actually changing their default. I'm not sure about that, their scoring setting, but just keep it. If you're playing a points league, just keep it the same. You don't need to change it. Sitting and tweaking and thinking that you found the magic formula to find the best point setting is wrong. There is, if your best player averages 60 versus him averaging 50 because of the perfect formula, it doesn't matter. You're never going to reflect real life exactly, because there's also no real life ranking that goes, well, this guy's second best player, and this guy's the third best player, and this guy's the fourth best player, and I'll have no argument about it, and it's a perfect system. It doesn't work. Everything is fluid, everything moves, everything is open to interpretation. So don't bog yourself down trying to find the perfect setting. For category leagues, I have issues with some of the categories that are used. I hate turnovers. Use them if you want, but I hate them. I think field goal percentage is a terrible way of judging a player's value. If you want to switch it out for effective field goal percentage or true shooting, go for it. I think that having 3-pointers made is dumb, because it was introduced back in the 80s when nobody hit threes and it was a little bit of a rare category. Now, everyone just hits them. And 3-pointers made is just scoring. You don't have a category for 2-pointers made. Although some of you will say having field goals made as a category is good. It's not. It's wrong. It's bad. Free throws made, also a bad category. But again, if you just spend so much time trying to tweak and adjust all these all the time, the net gain or net benefit from it is not enough. It needs to be a sweeping sort of change. And I'll continue to think and work on this stuff. We're so set on having 9 categories as our thing. It can be 7. It can be 8. It can be 11. There's no rule that it has to be 9. There's not even a rule that it needs to be an odd number, honestly. Oh, yeah, but then you need to have it so that we've got matchups. Yeah, so we don't have ties. Well, A, you can still have ties. B, if you have a tie during the regular season, whatever. Because if we're doing each category, it doesn't matter if it's 4-4 during the week, because we're not counting a 1 or a 0. We're counting the 4 and the 4. And then when you get to playoffs, you have other tiebreakers brought in, whatever. But we tie ourselves down to these ideas of something that was brought in 30, 40 years ago. And we just think, it's got to be 9 categories. It's got to be these categories. We've got to have 13-man rosters, 10 and 3. We have to do it. That's just how it is. Yeah, but no. Yeah? You don't have to mess with it that much. There are plenty of alternate categories you can use. Effective field goals, true shooting, offensive rebounds, 3-point percentage, 2-point percentage. But in the end, just don't mess with it too much. I don't think you need to. We've got a lot still to cover here, and I'll keep going through it. Now, I'm not going to go through too much of this one, but setting your lineups, there are multiple ways you can do it. You can set your lineups daily. You can set them weekly. You can set them twice a week. There's a new setting which I think is pretty interesting on Fantrax this week, where it's called the weekly daily format, where you can only make transactions like adds and drops once a week, but you can adjust your lineup every day. That, I think, is a pretty good situation. Part of the issue that people have is how do we combat streaming? How do we combat the fact that we've got to be active every single day playing fantasy basketball and make adds and drops and adjust these things? I think that I'll try it this season. I think this idea of having you hear people talk about in fantasy baseball, this idea of you have like a weekly fab or waiver processing date. Happens every Sunday. And because we see like someone get injured, the replacement come in, and then we sit and we work to see what happens, and then we make the strategy bid versus our budgets. But in fantasy basketball, if you're using daily moves, you've got to do these things immediately. And it can lead to a lot of irrational decisions and poor decisions. The way I think to make weekly/daily work is, again, you have the once a week adds and drops period. You have daily lineup you can move guys from starter to bench. The way to make this work is to, again, increase your bench. Because the fallback would be if I can't make adds every day and I get a lot of injuries, how do I make up the games played? Well, if you have an extended bench, instead of having 10 and 3, you have 10 and 8, for example. 10 starters, 8 bench. Well, I make up my games played from the guys on my bench. And then we do the processing of transactions once a week. Now, I know that most people will disagree with that because, again, that is not what they have done in the past. But I think it's intriguing. When I say timing, there are ways you can set up, like what is the timing to set my lineup? Is it at the tip-off of the first game? Is it the tip-off of each individual player's game? Is it 5 minutes before? When does lineup lock? You figure it out. I think you want to leave it as late as possible. And also, I think it's worth doing it that you can still make adjustments before a player is played, not when the first game locks. I think that's probably ideal. But again, your miles may vary. Trades. I will not undergo any discussion on this. League votes are for absolute, what word can I say here? Softcocks. You should not have league votes. You should not have vetoes. Oh, but then Josh, people will just throw anything. No. The commissioner oversees every trade. And if you can't trust your commissioner, don't be in the league. It is not your decision as an opposing manager to tell another manager how to manage his team. It is not your job. You don't know. Oh, well, that's a bad trade. You know what? You don't know. I don't know. You don't know. The commissioner shouldn't really be deciding. Oh, that's a little bit like, I'm not sure about that. No. Arbitrary rules that people put in. Now, I run projections at Basketball Monster. People will come to me and go, yeah, but what we do is we go on Basketball Monster's trade and analysis, and we look if there's a gap of bigger than this, then we don't let it go through. Don't do it. It is not your business. If somebody wants to trade a guy for another guy or two guys or whatever, let them do it. Now, if somebody is cheating, and I'll be very honest with you, it is incredibly easy to tell. Incredibly easy to tell if someone is cheating. Incredibly easy. Then the commissioner blocks that trade, gives the guy a warning, or kicks them out and locks their roster. Very simple. A trade of Giannis for, let's say, Jarrett Allen and Pascal Siakam, whatever. Oh, you can't trade a top 10 guy for two guys outside the top 30. You can. Not cheating. You are allowed to let other managers make what you deem as mistakes. That is allowed to happen. If someone who hasn't made a single roster move in 10 weeks trades away Luka for Max Christie, then yeah, they're cheating. It's actually incredibly obvious when there is collusion and cheating happening. Incredibly obvious. Otherwise, the trades go through. The commissioner pushes approve and they go through. Trade deadline. You got to have one. I don't care when it is. Just make it before your playoffs. You probably want to have it about 2 to 3 weeks before, but also it doesn't matter that much. Do you want draft pick trading? It can get pretty confusing in a redraft league. Usually don't do it. And some leagues have fees. You got to pay an extra bit of money for a trade you do, or you pay money for a transaction, a waiver transaction. Dumb. Don't agree with it. Shouldn't do it. But whatever. If you want to do it, go for it. I don't agree with it, but that's okay. We'll see. We'll see how we go. But in the meantime, thumb up, like, comment. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.